Oh dear, I got stuck with the ball. I got stuck holding the bag. I don't like this at all.
I'm sorry, which bag?
Uh, the OpenSSF operator token.
Ah,
Oh, so you're
Run
the one
away.
that has it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
we
just
should
remembered.
probably share that around a little bit, especially now that Carly's gone. As I was joining, I was like, wait a minute. Does anybody else have the authority to start this meeting? I realized
Oh,
as I was
dear.
sitting there waiting for it to start.
Yeah, I just had it. Chrome remembered that I used the LastPass to jump into this last time, and that surprise! I own the call today.
Well, thank you.
yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. I had not remembered at all. I just sat and waited and assumed it would happen. So I'm grateful.
So I'll just go back to lurking, and if you have questions for me, I'll be lingering in the wings.
I like it.
I thought our original intention was to have the leads attend this, right?
Yes, and it has been shared with the leads many, many times, and
Okay.
you're the only consistent attendee.
Yay me.
I don't know, maybe we should put out a poll that this might just be a incompatible time for a lot of folks. So I should see if there's a better time. I know some of the groups have actually been kind of reworking their meeting times as well. So
Yeah, I just got access to the calendar, so I can make calendar changes.
oh, good. Yeah, that calendar system's also not the best thing ever, because it doesn't exactly send updates anytime people change their meeting time. So you kind of just have to know.
Hi there. Sorry for being a little bit late.
Oh, no worries.
Right. It does work if you happen to already be using Google Calendar for your calendar. It does
Yes.
change it for me. So, but I'm using Google Calendar, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, us Microsoft folks, strangely, are not using Google Calendar.
It's inexplicable.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Weird, right? Oh, don't say that, Jennifer.
I miss Google
Oh.
Calendar.
I've been using Outlook for like 20 something years. It's hard to imagine using something else at this point.
There's an awesome free and open source option for you called Thunderbird. It's a great client.
God, I forgot all about that.
I've used it.
Thunderbird?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Long time. Back when it was like downloadable with Firefox, right? It all came together bundled.
Oh no, I used it separately. I haven't used it recently, but
I remember using it in school, like a long time ago. I remember using it maybe with like Linux Mint 17 or something.
Oh my gosh. Well, now that we all know that we've all been doing this for a while, we can kick off.
No, I just like the old vintages.
All right. Oh man. All right, so let's get started. Kay mentioned to me that she's not able to make it today. She has a conflict. So a couple of things on the agenda. So Dan Middleton, I don't know if you're actually on there. Are you? I cannot see you. But he put on here, clean up the future agenda topics in this document. I have done that. So I went through the top. There are a few things on there real quick that I wanted to touch that, like Dan Lawrence, you have on here the public versus private communication. And I think that stemmed from a email discussion that happened on one of the aliases. Did you still want to talk about that? I mean, we can put it on for later today, or has that been resolved?
Later today is good. I mean, I think I proposed getting rid of the private TAC list and there was an opposition, but somebody actually has to do it, or maybe we have to discuss it.
Okay.
Later today's fine.
All right, let's we'll get through the rest of this, and then I'm pretty sure we'll have time. We'll go ahead and we'll talk about that as well. So then, Mr. Wheeler, put you on the spot again regarding executive orders. I know I was in the meeting yesterday. I know there's not a lot to share, but I thought maybe you could kind of just give everybody an update about where you're at in the process, just so that we're kind of all on the same page.
Absolutely. And you gave me an out whether you meant to or not, because you just said EO follow-up. So there's actually a lot more to be said. If you give me a vague general topic, I'll just drive right off the cliff with that.
We'll take it.
Be a part of this group, David. Carry on.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. So there's a crazy amount of things that are happening as a response to this U.S. executive order. There was a recent NIST workshop. I pitched a little bit about. First of all, they had 5 questions. I wrote 5 papers. And the OpenSSF was prominently, I believe, in all of them. I was actually invited back to speak at the critical projects panel. And because I had made some suggestions about how to define critical projects. I actually have some concerns, just kind of FYI. They're still trying to figure out how they define critical projects. They really don't want to define them in terms of how the software is used, which I think to me and many other people is not really a good plan. The reason they want to do that is because it's very hard for government acquisition officers to know how it's going to be used, to which I would say, well, that's a problem you need to fix as opposed to accepting the problem. But for whatever reason, they have not made a final decision. I think the good news is that they are aware about open source software. I think the concern would be, once you identify critical software, what are you going to do about that? It's not clear right now what that will mean. So
Are they basing that just purely based on usage, not, like you said, like not how it's used, but just like quantity? Is that
no, categories? Is it an operating system? Is it a web browser?
Oh, geez.
Is it a network monitoring system? I think I've convinced them that well, I think it didn't take that much convincing, because they were already aware of this, that, hey, if it's at least in research, that doesn't really make much sense. And I tried to convince them, I tried to convince them that at least if something else is managing its security, maybe you don't need to worry about that. Yeah, they were very unprepared to have a real answer when they met by critical software. I mean, to be fair, that was the point of the meeting, was they wanted to hear from others what they thought critical software meant. So I have concerns about how they'll define it, and probably even more importantly, once you define it and once you identify it, then what do you do? And that's to be determined. I have a lot of concerns about, either they can create requirements and so on that are useless. Well, that does no harm, but it also does no good. Or they can create requirements that are ridiculous, and it's going to be all too easy. I don't have a simple solution for that, but hopefully that'll get better. Lots of activity, lots of questions. People are absolutely just pinging me to death with questions, and it's all good. I'm a little tired. I am trying to create a list. Jim Zemlin asked me to create a list of what things should be done to improve open source security. In other words, activities. Um, he wants it whether or not it falls in OpenSSF's umbrella or not. And I think basically he's looking for kind of a a list so that he can go and try to get sums of money. I think we have to. I cautioned another OpenSSF group yesterday. Don't assume that it will necessarily be funded, but we're going to try. And I think we're actually going to be trying to see if we can pull tens of millions. That doesn't mean any of that will actually happen. So don't schedule on it happening, but we're gonna make a push. Okay, and that's it.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, David.
So I'm hoping to be able to share more. A lot of it's from the wish list, but Jim wanted a review before he shared it further. So he's my boss's boss, so I do what he says.
We all understand. Awesome. No, I think there's some interesting things happening there in those NIST workshops. I know Microsoft's been pretty heavily involved in them as well. That actually one of the reasons Kay is not here this morning is she's dealing with some of this stuff from the EO. So as I know many of you are as well. So then the next thing is the budget vote. So I know we had talked about this in the previous TAC meeting where we all kind of approved, yes, we should fund these various initiatives, but the governing board came back after the budgeting committee met and the governing board met and said that they would like us in detail to officially vote as a TAC group and approve these very specific numbers. There is one that is still kind of up in the air, the OSTF one. So I'll talk about that real quick, just because I don't think we're going to be able to actually vote on that one today. But the original proposal, if you all remember from OSTF, when they presented, they had an entire plan that was for the year to do their work was $2.3 million. OpenSSF clearly does not have those funds at the moment, specifically since we're not collecting membership dues just yet. So the governing board said, hey, we can give $60,000 towards that project. Which I think is helpful, but we need them to now go and revise the proposal of what they would do exactly with 60,000 versus 2.3 million. I imagine it's a slightly different scope of work, and we should know what that is. And so I've reached out to them. They're going to get a proposal to us. So once they have that revision, we can see what that looks like, and then we can actually vote on that one.
Ryan, I have a question. We don't need to wait for another meeting. Once they make the proposal, that can just go out immediately for an electronic vote, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And so actually that kind of gets to my next point of how we're going to vote on these things to make it official record. So what we've done in the past, right, is we've created the GitHub issues and then we've approved them. And once we reach a certain threshold, we can consider it approved. I propose that we do that again because it can happen asynchronously, exactly as you said, David. So once we have that proposal, we can just kind of get rolling with it. Is everybody okay with that? Anybody opposed? Going once, going twice, sold, GitHub issues, it is. All right, so the Identifying Security Threats Working Group, they have asked for $41,600. 1,600 of those is coming from the Azure credits to do the hosting for the service that they're building. And then 40,000 of that is going to go towards development of actually creating more code for their services and things like that. So that's 41.6, and then the Developer Best Practices group is 63.1. That's 30,000 of operational as far as like hosting and all that kind of stuff. And then actually, I did have a question about that if they were going to use Azure credits as well, because there are still some available. And then it also includes development of their single sign-on webhooks and their SKF labs. So those are the two. Does anybody have questions on those as far as budget goes? Or?
For the operational, that's also SKF, right?
Yes, as far as I know, yeah. Cool. So any other questions on that? All right, I'll get those issues put out on GitHub today, and then send out an email link to those guys. So just vote approve. If you approve them, we'll get that sent over to the governing board, and then funds can be dispersed, and we can continue making progress here. So, and then the last thing, I guess, now that we do have time for, man, we're just flying through this morning. So Dan, do you want to talk about the public versus private communication?
Oh yeah, so there's a thread maybe a month or so ago now, I forget, about just getting rid of the OpenSSF private TAC mailing list. I think we set it up originally to be used for like discussing private security disclosures, that kind of thing, in case it came up. That use case never came up, but I think people keep accidentally sending things to that one instead of the public one. So I'm proposing we just get rid of that one.
So I do see the advantage of having it for certain situations, but I could definitely see the concern if people are sending to it when they really shouldn't be and hiding communication that maybe should be public, intentional or not. I guess if we did get rid of it, what would be the alternative for, should we have one of these scenarios pop up? Just email directly, not use a mailing list.
Or the existing governing board ones, which are private.
Is the problem more of a teething pain problem? If we just disabled it for a month and then quietly restored it, would that do the same thing, or it's just impossible to stop people from using it when they shouldn't?
Yeah, I tried. I couldn't get people to stop. I took a look. I couldn't find a single conversation on there that seemed like it should have been on that list. So I'd say keep it
This is
simple.
interesting
The other way, just delete it.
Yeah, because I haven't even noticed that people are using that, because it just comes through my mail, right? I see TAC and I read it, but were there a lot of conversations on there? Because like I said, I haven't really noticed or been paying attention.
Yeah, there's quite a few on there if you take a look.
Okay, yeah, I'll go back and check that out. I like David's suggestion of disabling, because like I said, I do see the advantage of having it when we need it, and not everybody has access to the governing board private mailing list. I don't know, what are other thoughts?
Like, if we could disable it for a while and then if we needed it, flick it back on, I don't know if that solves the problem. But if it did,
it's up to you. I'm assuming that we can. I actually don't know. I'm not as familiar with this particular mailing list
disabling
system.
may mean deleting. I don't know. All right, well, we can contact somebody that has maybe some knowledge of that and see what our options are. I would be in favor of disabling for now if disabling is an option. I think the net result's the same. If we need it, we bring it back somehow.
Well, the minor advantage of disabling is that I don't know, does deleting eliminate the conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not sure.
So I would say vote now. If you want to disable, if it's possible, otherwise delete. And then if we find out if it can't be disabled, when you have the answer, you don't need to bring it back.
Right, and if we have to delete, then we need to see if we can archive those messages. Okay, so Dan, sorry,
like,
go ahead.
if we were dealing with, like, we use the use case of like a sensitive disclosure, it might make sense to have that be pretty group limited anyway, and we know that everyone's that's on the alias is current and all that kind of thing.
Oh, so that sounds like an argument for deletion then? Is that what you're suggesting?
I guess I'm opening it as a question to the group, really, is like, we had, I guess, put this in at some point thinking like we might as a TAC need to have sensitive conversations. Dan has raised the valid point of like, what are those sensitive conversations? So I guess what I'm saying is, if we are thinking that it's for something like disclosure, does this even still fit that purpose?
It's a fair question.
It's a great question. Yeah, I know these were created in the beginning of we sat down with Carly and said, okay, what do we need mailing lists for? Okay, each working group needs one. Okay, the TAC needs one. The governing board needs one. We might have sensitive conversations. Let's create a private one for each of those as well. So yeah, like Jennifer, you just said, Dan, great point. Like, maybe we don't. We haven't had this situation. Maybe there's alternatives. So given that, I mean, I think it's definitely on the table that maybe we don't need this, and if people are using it inappropriately, let's, you know, crawl, walk, run into this thing and say, let's start with disabling and just make sure that we don't lose some of those conversations. And also, if something pops up, it's easy to turn back on. But then if we decide in 2 months it's useless, let's kill it.
My only comment is the paradigm for a private mailing list is established at Apache Foundation, for example, but they clearly have rules, put out for when you use it or not, publicly available rules, which what it's used for, and it's typically done for vulnerabilities. So once we have more software projects, you don't want people posting to public mailing lists. You have a vulnerability in some of your software. So that's one of the reasons Apache keeps private mailing lists.
Yeah, I know that was definitely the intention, or one of the intentions of creating these things. There was that, and there was also like if there were sensitive kind of like quote HR type conversations that were happening, personal and things that needed to be discussed. That was kind of the intention of it. We just haven't actually had that scenario yet, but certainly can see it in the future. But Dan's whole point here is people are using it incorrectly right now. So how do we fix that? And it could be as simple as let's just drastically change the name of it, because I'm betting it's auto-populating when somebody says OpenSSF-TAC, and then they used it once before. Now it's auto, filling when they go to send an email.
I'm not aware. Is there a roadmap saying use these emails lists for these purposes?
It was written down somewhere at some point. It might have been at the governing board level. I'm not sure. It was
typically
early days.
unless we're talking spam here, if people know where to go, if all else fails, they go private maybe. So giving people a roadmap and street signs is probably preferable regardless.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the issue here, what's happening is actually not from like external folks that don't know better. It's more like within the active OpenSSF groups of TAC and governing board, people are just accidentally using the wrong one. So are we all pretty much agreeing that we should attempt to disable this, at least for now, for like the next month or two?
And if it can't be disabled, delete it.
Works for me.
Let's kill it.
Okay, who's going to make the request? I think what you need to do is just contact John Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Ryan, if you want to,
So, if there are issues that are sensitive, is there create a different one? This one's been abused. So is there a new one that could be created? Not having a private one or not having a roadmap, I think is a larger issue in terms of if there is a problem, because I know we have more and more projects that are being sponsored and code coming in.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that, again, I think there is a need for something like this. And I think you're right. This one, most likely due to naming, right? People are just accidentally using the wrong one. Maybe we do create a new one that is very specific. And when we create that, put these lists of requirements as a roadmap, and we'll put it publicly, publicly on the.
Create a thing if like legal, make it private, so it's clearly named legal or something like that. I think that's what Apache does too for legal issues. So.
Well, it's named pretty clearly, isn't it? It's just TAC private or something like OpenSSF TAC private.
Well, that's what I think is the problem, right? Is that right now internally, I think folks that have used it before, if you start to type OpenSSF-TAC and then it tries to autocomplete, you're like, oh, yep, that's it, because it's some long mailing list thing. But they're getting the private one they've sent to before because of auto completion. Like it's too similar, I think, is the problem.
Yeah, here's my hope. My hope is that by temporarily disabling it, it'll bounce back. That will get fixed. It won't be your default because that won't be the last one you used.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
if it is indeed named TAC private, that's a problem. People think that's a private conversation amongst the TAC members or to the TAC members. So the labeling sounds like a problem.
No, that is what it is.
But I'm saying
what it is.
I'm saying that for issues like legal, for vulnerabilities, for security, for whatever HR, whatever, it probably should not have TAC in the name at all.
Well, it's because this is a private alias intended for just the TAC members. So whereas the TAC mailing list is public to anybody who wants to join, anybody can attend the TAC meetings, whether they're a TAC rep or not. right? Like, so then there was this private one. It's like, okay, just amongst the quote voting members, there was an ability for us to discuss sensitive topics.
Gotcha.
Now, maybe we need another one that's like a disclosure alias, right, for vulnerabilities and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
I
separate.
suspect though that for most vulnerabilities specifically, they're going to be for specific projects. You shouldn't be contacting the TAC. You should contact that project.
Absolutely.
So I think TAC private's okay. I think you're right though. The problem is once people start using as a default, it keeps going. And that's why I was proposing to just suspend it, because once people stop doing that, it could be used later for its actual intended purpose.
And I think Raul put in the chat here, I think this is a good idea as well. When we do turn it back on in a month or two, if we can do an auto reply saying, please use TAC public unless XYZ, then you can use the private one. I think that's could be a good way to educate folks.
Actually, I would send that email first before you turn it back on.
Yeah, no, true.
Don't use this. Here's an email. You're on it. Don't use it.
That's right. We're creating this thing. Don't use it.
Yeah, when we disable it, if we can do like this auto reply, that also helps.
Right.
Yep, definitely. Cool. All right. Well, that is all I had on the agenda for today. Is there anything that folks would like to bring up? We got 30 more minutes. Otherwise, you guys get 30 minutes back, and I'll use it to create these GitHub issues. No?
I had a question, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
The SKF guys were interested in potentially a time frame when they might hear back about that vote. Do we have just a rough swag of a date when we might make that final decision?
As far as approving the budget?
Yes.
So I'm going to send these out, these issues out within the hour. And then I would like to put a time constraint of by Wednesday to have folks vote on this. If we have this extra 30 minutes, please go do it now. But yes, the governing board didn't put a time frame on it. We just need to approve it. But so I'm saying Wednesday is at the latest.
Okay, so my next meeting is next week, so that gives me plenty of time. So there should be a decision or not, one way or the other by then, maybe.
Yeah, and basically, like I said, I think we're all good of approving these. The governing board wanted a formalization of it, so that's what we're doing. So I think it's just kind of like checking.
I don't want to adversely influence any decision.
No worries.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? All right, I will give you 30 minutes back, and I'll go create these issues. So please, I'll send that mail out. Please go vote on them. And then that way Krob can get his funding and continue on his great work. All right, thank you all. We'll
Thank you.
see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.